confident. Please, this is yours. Hello, everybody. I hope this works. Please sit down, take your seats. Monsieur le Président, Pan Premier, dear guests, my name is Robert Vaš, and I'm the President and Founder of Globsec. Welcome to the sixth debate with European citizens and young leaders, young people, about the future of Europe, which is a part of the so-called European Citizens Consultation series across Europe that President Macron announced. And probably this is the only debate which is taking place in Central Europe, and maybe, and probably the last one in this format, which will take place before the European election next year. And Globsec is proud to host this debate in Bratislava. Let me say very quickly 3 points why I think this is a very symbolic visit of a French president in Bratislava. First of all, we are in a building where more than 200 years the so-called Pressburg Peace Treaty was signed between France and Austro-Hungarian monarchy that ended the period of war. But there is no more Habsburg monarchy. Today we have no winners and losers. We are all on the same side because we have the great peace project of the European Union, because we are fighting with ideas and not with arms about the future of Europe. The second is because we are celebrating the 100 years of Czechoslovakia, and France was very crucial to help to establish the young democracy in Central Europe. Thank you for that. And the third, a little bit more personal note, is that I share something here together with President Macron and Prime Minister Pellegrini, and that's the youthful spirit. That's the youthful spirit. In 2017, the media speculated how it feels to be the youngest head of French state in the history since Bonaparte. And at the same time, Slovakia has never had a younger head of government as Mr. Pellegrini.
Oh, really?
I also started with Globsec 16 years ago when I was still a student. And even today, Globsec is full of young people and full of energy. And we know at Globsec that when it comes to getting things done, age is not an issue. Before we start the debate, let me very quickly welcome on stage the host, the mayor of the Bratislava, Mr. Ivo Nesrovnal, who shares also the young spirit of Bratislava, to say a few welcoming words. And I would like to ask for the microphone here. Thank you.
Well, we go this way. Thank you very much. Thank you, Robert. Thank you. Well, cher Monsieur le Président Macron, dear Prime Minister Pellegrini, dear Chairman Droba, sitting somewhere here, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, I'm happy to welcome you all to Bratislava, to this thrilling debate about Europe's future. In fact, we are in the oldest music hall in Bratislava. It was since 1780, where cultural and international political events take place here. And this is a perfect continuation. And it was here in December 1805 where Charles Maurice Talleyrand signed the Le Traité de Pressburg. And ever since, Bratislava has its own street in Paris. It's a Rue de Pressburg, c'est à côté de l'Étoile. But not far from here, it was, as the story has it, Napoleon had a very long, deep conversation talk with Khatam Sofer, who was the one of Bratislava's wisest and most respectful men. But that was the beginning of 19th century. What significance does it have for today? For me, peace is not just a simple act of opposition to war. It must include cooperation, its values, principles, and institutions. The alternative to cooperation is not peace. The alternative to cooperation is violence and war. And I believe that Europe's deepest choice was and remains a simple one. Do we commit ourselves to cooperation, or do we let the ghost of war, terror, hate take over us? Dear President Macron, it's my honor to welcome you to Bratislava. 100 years ago, France supported the efforts of a great Slovak patriot, Milan Rastislav Štefánik, and his partners in creating the Republic of Czechoslovakia. We are grateful for France for this support. Moreover, I'm honored to welcome you to Bratislava as a proponent of European cooperation, and I believe that you will leave our city strengthened by our commitment to Europe, by our commitment to cooperation. I'm proud of the people here in audience, as I am proud of the city of Bratislava that welcomes you here. Cher Monsieur le Président, soyez la bienvenue à Bratislava. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. And let me now pass the floor to the Prime Minister of Slovakia, Peter Pellegrini, who's not only the head of government, but he's also known as Mr. Innovation, a dedicated pro-European and one of the brightest minds when it comes to digital agenda. I hope you agree with that. Please,
you very much.
Floor is yours.
Thank you for your kind words, Mr. President. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I am very glad that together with the French President today I have the possibility to share with you our perspective of the future of European Union. And it will be not easy debate probably, because I think we have great ideas and Mr. President has even more great ideas, and he is a big supporter, and we would love to hear your opinion and to have the possibility to ask your questions. And our biggest target is, minimum in Slovakia for myself, is to bring as much as possible people to vote in the next European elections. Not to be again the leader in the European Union with the lowest number of citizens which are coming at the day to vote. On the other side, you know, somehow to finish with the Slovak paradox. Very high support to European Union and the lowest results in the elections. So I hope that thanks to your visit, Emmanuel, we will change this situation in the next elections, and I'm very happy that so many young people are here. I have to say that European Union brought for Slovakia a big success, and especially through our membership in European Union, it allowed us to punch above our weight, because we are a small country, and we are also one of the youngest inside this elite club, but it helped us really, economically, politically, also fiscally. And Slovakia, I have to confirm, is a really proud member and supporter of the European integration, and the EU is for us the only realistic alternative, and there is no other alternative from my point of view. And we are prepared to bear an adequate burden of responsibility in the EU and also contribute to a discussion on its future. To do so, I will break down the issue into three main questions today. Where are we now? Where do we want to go? And how do we get there? And to deliberate on prospects of future, we must always start with self-reflection. So where are we now? In a world of dramatic and not always favorable changes, we have to find a new global balance. The international order based on respect for written and unwritten rules is under threat of the rise of unilateralism, protectionism, isolation, alternative offers for governance, terrorism, and other hybrid threats, including disinformation campaigns. Sometimes we feel as if things do not make sense, and no democratic country is immune to these developments. And we are facing many challenges coming from inside of European societies. Sorrowfully, the challenges coming from inside are always worse. Practically since the outbreak of the Eurozone crisis in 2009, through the migration challenge in 2015, we have been struggling with internal crises and problems, and we survived them rather than resolve them till now. We forgot to talk to our citizens. They do not feel our ownership and the European identity enough. they do not feel the relevance and urgency. And when they do not hear the answers from us, they turn elsewhere. A striking example of this loss of confidence and alarm clock for the EU was Brexit. People want different approach to solving problems, and they want to see tangible results. I do not think any of us is satisfied with the picture I just painted, but so my second question is where do we want to go? And I think it's towards realizing the ideals. We want to see the EU united and prosperous and secure, and at the top of the scientific and technological progress. The EU, which plays important global role in world politics, including defense, adequate to its economic power. EU as a community promoting values of freedom, democracy, human rights, open to international cooperation and forging partnerships, welcoming new member states and opening doors for the return of those that once left. And EU where decisions are agreed by consensus and mutual respect, and EU that provides an identity. So how do we get there? Only if we stay united, only if we complete the main integration projects, only if we are equal each other, only if we provide vision outside our borders, and only if we speak honestly with our citizens. Many questions for many difficult answers, but I think that today we will hear from Mr. Macron a lot of good ideas about the future shape of European Union. Thank you very much, and thank you to be here with you today.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. And in your opening speech in Sorbonne, Mr. President, you said, I quote, "I came to talk to you about Europe. Some will say, again, they'd better get used to it." And you're right, because we can never get tired of the subject of the future of the European Union. Over to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, and I'm very happy to be here. I will not make a speech and a new one because I'm much more here to answer your questions. First of all, I'm not sure I have to thank you for this reference to Napoleon, even if I know that Bratislava resisted and finally he never totally finished what he wanted to do here. But definitely because I think our Europe is very different from Napoleon's view and all this different scenario of what I call the hegemonic view of Europe. I mean, till the creation of the European Union, we always had this sort of what we called in the ancient Roman law, this translatio imperii, which means this transfer of empire. We had the Roman Empire, the Carolingian Empire, and a series of empires where the unique way to make the unity of Europe was through the hegemony of one against the others. What we built after the Second World War is totally new. It's based on dialogue, unity, and cooperation. Sometimes it can be seen as a constraint, but for me, it's definitely the unique way to have this miracle, and please look at this miracle, because this is the very first time we have in this continent of so many languages, so many identities, peace and prosperity during 7 decades. It never happened during centuries and centuries. And this is because this very sophisticated democratic project. The second reference, the French reference, I don't want to endorse today, was one a few decades ago when one told you, I mean, you lost an occasion not to speak and comment. I think it's exactly the opposite I want to do here. I think you have to speak and comment. And and that's why I was a strong believer of, I mean, this European dialogues. Is that Europe is not, I mean, the property of some member states, some leaders, some categories, some people always, agreeing to each other. No, it's the people's property. And we need controversy, we need discussion, and we need to listen to the others and try to bridge the different gaps we have. And as I often say, to try to suppress this untranslatables between our culture. This is the only way to make solid this crazy project we have. The third thing I wanted to say was about your first reference, about this spirit of youth. It's not about being young, but I do believe that part of the European project is this loyalty to this spirit of youth, which means that being European means dreaming about universal ideas, and it's never accepting what's happening when it is unfair or when it is not conform to this project. And for a lot of people, it seemed to be automatic. But when they do so, they betray the spirit of youth. And you experience that in your country. The Velvet Revolution was the spirit of youth. And that's why I want to pay a tribute to those who made this revolution and present in this room. And what we owe to this generation and to you, and what we owe to our young generation, and what this generation owe to the young who defeated the crazy ideas at that time, is precisely this fidelity to this spirit of youth. Never accept. And never get bored and tired because of what we have, because it is very fragile. And your country experienced that. And for me, at this very moment of the European story, we have to think about that. We have to think about the fact that peace, freedom, our European values are not for centuries and centuries and are not automatic in our countries. Some people fought for that. They took risks. They lost their lives. And when we accept that some others push our full ideas, revert to a very strong nationalism, and de facto the division of Europe, and de facto the submission of their country or our countries to other powers, they betrayed the spirit of youth. This is the point. So for me, this very moment, and that's why I wanted to be here for such a debate in this occasion, a few days before the centenary and discussing with you, is that for me it's not the classical European questions. Europe is not something to be discussed amongst people who agree or with tired people. It's a very new story, in fact, when you look at the story of the continent. But this is our duty, to be united and accept absolutely none of the divisions they want to impose, to be sovereign and to fight for our values, to fight for what we built during this past decade. Because nobody gave these values and this story to us. We built it. Our founding fathers did it. And now we have to reinvent it. That's the point. I will not be longer, but I just wanted to insist on these few ideas, and now I want to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Thank you for your inspiring remarks, Monsieur le Président. You said that I don't have red lines, I only have horizons. And that sounds like a good recipe to open the debate also to the audience. So think of your questions, because I will be taking questions in rounds, in 3. So think of them, catch my eye pretty soon, but I will use the opportunity being a moderator and ask you the first question.
But please be direct
Yes?
and raise all the possible questions you have.
Absolutely. So in the meantime, please raise your hands as I'm speaking and Mr. President will be speaking. More than a year ago, you won the elections in France with a strong pro-European agenda. It was in the middle of anti-Brussels and populist trends that were growing in Europe. So you have turned the mood in Europe to positive. You gave a hope and a vision for the future of Europe. The question is how long this can last. In some countries, populists are holding still strong. And what would be your advice to all the politicians who, like you, or others in this country and other countries, would like to win with the pro-European agenda, not only the next European parliamentary elections, but their national parliamentary elections?
Look, first, I do believe in Europe for a few reasons. I do believe in this history I mentioned. I think it's pretty unique to have this cooperation with such a diversity, and I think this is a very powerful political view, a very powerful political project. There is no comparison. You have huge space with homogeneity. You have divided spaces because of this diversity, but this is brand new. Second, when I look at our current challenges, Europe is the best way to address them. Our current challenges are environment. It's impossible to address environment and ecological change, climate change, and so on, at a national level. It doesn't make sense. So the unique way to do so is to have a big push at the European level. Today we procrastinate a little bit because of the lack of cooperation, because you have a lot of diverse interests, and we can revert during the questions on that. But I'm sure about one thing: if Europe is united, we can deliver on climate change. Second, migration. We will probably speak about that. The unique way to deal with migration is at the European scale. What? Because we are not a series of islands. Because people move. And you cannot buy Europe when it is for free movement and having a big labor market on all the advantages, and to say Europe no more exists when it is about migration. Because people just have a free movement. They move all around the place. The unique way to deal with migration is at the European scale. The unique way to deal with Africa is with a new compact between Europe and Africa, and to build prosperity in the large region. When you speak about digital change, innovation, how to be sure that we are a new competitive power in that dimension, this is all about Europe. It's impossible to be competitive and build a European Google if you deal at the national scale. Because the domestic market of a startup in China or in the US is a market of 1 billion or 500 million people. We need the European market, an actual single digital market to do so. If I want to guarantee you I will protect your privacy vis-à-vis some players, and given the data you put on the net, I just can do so at the European level. Otherwise, somebody will create, in another member state, a company and will deal with your data. So when you face all these challenges, the unique way, and a series of some others, obviously, sovereignty and relation between powers. If we want to protect our people from a defense point of view, the unique way, actual way to do so, is at the European level. If you want to be protected vis-à-vis China, Russia, the US, sometimes we have the same interests, but we have to be respected. This is at the European scale. That's why I'm a strong believer, and these are the ideas I defended during my elections, and I want to defend at the European elections. So when you face that and you explain to your people, they do believe in Europe. It means that we have to improve this Europe, we have to strengthen it, we have to change it, about the Eurozone, Europe of defense, and so on. And we did a lot during the past year. But the national way as an opposition or an alternative to Europe is not credible when you look at that. Third point, I believe because of story, I believe in Europe because of this is the best way to face these challenges. Third, in terms of method. The big mistakes of pro-European leaders or challengers is that we didn't dare. We left the floor to those who criticize or want to dismantle the European project. This is totally crazy. If you have no emotion when you speak about Europe, if you say, Europe, it's good, we have it, this is something we will monitor, it's how to deal with what we have, how to improve your life. If it's just about a series of public policies or bureaucracies, nobody will love it. Nobody fell in love with single market. But if you speak about Erasmus, how to be protected, how to deal with climate change, Europe has a different face. And we have to fight for that, because this is a battle. And the big mistake we made, and this is my advice for these European elections and for your national elections, is that don't leave the floor to those who want to dismantle and kill the European project. As a pro-European, we want to improve it, we want to criticize it in order to make it better, not to kill it. But never leave the alternative between those who just defend Europe as a sort of naive idea and those who are realistic and defend the national level. This is a huge mistake. If you want to protect, for instance, the national answer is not the best one. This is crazy. And I can revert on it if you want on migration. So in terms of approach, you have to fight for that, and you don't have to leave the floor to the anti-European. Fourth point, is that you have to make it warm, vivid, tangible. Europe is not just an idea. This is personal stories, this is personal battles. And I think in your country especially, it's what you say, it's not acceptable that in a country who decided to join Europe, who decided to be free, you have such a minority going to the vote. You have to decide about your future. But what I know is that you, as a people, you decided to become free through a revolution. You decided to join the European Union, to join the Eurozone, to join Schengen, and to be at the very core of Europe. Those who decided that have now to endorse it, all in all, and to push it. So that's what I do believe, that today, this opposition between progressive or pro-European and nationalist people is the one to frame the next Europe. It's not just a nitty-gritty, it's not, I would say, the classical way to proceed. We are at an historical moment, and that's what I did in Europe. And when you start doing so, people are proud about this history. And they perfectly understand the fact that this is what is at stake.
Thank you very much. Really inspiring. Strong. And emotional. That is how it should look like. So, I've seen some questions here. And then please pass the mic to the second. Here. Okay.
Josef Bátor, I'm professor of political science at Comenius University in Bratislava. Monsieur le Président, c'est un grand plaisir de vous rencontrer ici, en notre ville. It's a great pleasure to meet you here. In your speech in Athens a year ago, more than a year ago, you spoke very convincingly about how the Greek crisis is a European crisis, how it shouldn't be only seen as a national crisis of a member state, but it should be seen, due to the interconnectedness of the European Union, as a European problem that should be dealt with in a European way. Now, the kind of democratic crisis some parts of the European Union and some member states are now experiencing, notably our neighbors in Hungary and Poland, are they also syndromes of a wider problem, which would be a European problem? Right now, they're being dealt with by national, in a kind of a national targeted way towards these two countries. But should we find European solutions to the problem, because they're syndromes of a wider European problem with democracy?
Thank you. You can pass the mic right next to you. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Katarina, and I'm from Political Science Department at Comenius University. It's also a great pleasure to meet you. I would like to ask you on European defense and its future. In terms of PESCO, maybe, the permanent structured cooperation, how do you perceive it? Thank you.
Thank you. And the third question, I think the mic is over here. Thank you.
Bonjour, Mr. President. Bienvenue en Slovakie. My name is Jan Čverha. I'm student of International Relations and Diplomacy, University of Matěj Bell. And my question is, there are two views of the EU development. The first, it is go deeper. It means increase European integration in such as area as law and taxes among the existing countries. The second one, it is about a wider union, which means to let in new countries and make the potential free trade market bigger. Which vision do you think is best and why? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The
As
floor
for
is
the
yours.
first question, I think we do have a democratic crisis. But this crisis was fueled by our inability to fix the former ones, as the Prime Minister said. I.e., we had indeed an economic and financial crisis, which was an actual European crisis. We didn't properly fix. We fixed because we increased the level of responsibility within the European Union without a lot of solidarity. That's why we need more solidarity within the Eurozone. And we asked to a lot of countries in Europe post this crisis a huge adjustment in real terms, which means that for the very first time after the Second World War, in some countries in Europe, some free countries, we asked some governments to cut pensions, to cut salaries, to sack civil servants like crazy, between 20 to 30%. We increased poverty and inequalities. The second big crisis was about migration. It was a crisis of solidarity as well within Europe after 2015. And with the lack of solidarity within this European Union, what did we do? We asked big efforts to some governments with big divides, north-south, east-west. And what happened? A lot of these people, those who get asked with these big efforts, or those who were feared by the current situation, decided to go and to vote for nationalistic leaders or to leave progressively the European project. And this is a big issue we have. But having said that, I want to say we have part of the responsibility of this situation. We have part of the responsibility because of the fact that the European project was incomplete and because of this lack of solidarity. And because we leave the floor to those who played with that. That's why, for me, one of the critical points of the political project in Europe is to have a more sovereign and united Europe, i.e. with more solidarity, because this is a Europe for people. Because at the very beginning, for instance, we never promised a Greek person that his future will be to go to Berlin, but he will have a better future staying in Athens. And we betrayed that in a certain way. So having said that, you pointed to specific countries, Hungary and Poland. They are part of the symptoms of this democratic crisis with a lot of differences because you have the Italian political crisis, largely due to what I described. You have the rise of extreme rights and national parties in a lot of countries. In Hungary and Poland, the situation was due as well to a very specific feature of this country. And the fact that the national fact was part of the identity post-revolution and part of the identity against the domination of the Soviet Empire. And this is something different we have to take in mind and we have to respect. And some of these leaders played with unacceptable ideas. When I listen to leaders comparing Brussels with Moscow in the ancient time, this is crazy and unacceptable. And they are lying to their people. When I see big billboards saying no Brussels or stop Brussels, what do? They want to stop Brussels with structural funds? Be my guest. How do they live? How does the Fidesz live because it's financed by the Fidesz? How do they live? Who paid them? Who made their career? Structural funds. Why do they, fight for freedom and being part of a Europe of values. What are these leaders doing? Betraying the spirit and lying to their people, like those who promoted the Brexit and left the country right after they won, because they don't know how to proceed, but they played with us. And they played, and they play today with our weaknesses, because nobody dares to stop that. But this is, the new way to be nationalistic and play with this democratic situation. So my point is to say, let's face it and go and say the truth. This is the best way to fight against these demagogues. They want to stop Brussels? Let's explain the people, and all the people, what does it represent? Building roads, building schools, making a life better for everybody. They want to stop with that? What is about Brussels? Brussels is a free choice. We all decided to join this club. We made it. Brussels is us. And this is, for me, the big betrayals of leaders in all the countries. They fueled this democratic crisis because the day you have a problem, they say, the good thing is mine, but the problem is Brussels. But Brussels is us. We are the ones to decide in Brussels every month around the table, 27, and the ministers at every level. So they are lying. And we have to explain our people. And we have to explain that what they want, especially in Poland and Hungary, is to be protected, to be free, and to decide for the future. So the best way to address this democratic crisis is truth, fight, democratic fight, and let's face it, what do they want? Do you think that Poland alone or Hungary alone will be in a situation to protect itself the day Russia will change its mind? The day some other power will decide to make its market in Europe? No, for sure. Do they think that the most reliable partner is Moscow, or Bratislava, Berlin, Roma, and Paris? Are they able to explain it to the people? What is our past about and our future about? So I think this democratic crisis is a crisis of efficiency of our Europe, dealing with the imbalances. That's why I want to fix it. But this is a crisis as well about truth. We left the floor to the demagogues. They are crazy. As for the Europe of defense, it's closely linked to this point, because this project is, for me, one of the critical elements to convince Polish, Hungarians, and a lot of others to be part of Europe. Till recently, we didn't have any Europe of defense, actual Europe of defense, largely because of France in the middle of the 50s, because we blocked that. During the past year, we built, indeed, the PESCO, a cooperation between us, a European Fund for Defense, and we launched a European initiative for a better integration and more interventions together. And I proposed a few weeks ago to launch a new initiative for strategic autonomy at the European level, the equivalent of Article 5 at the NATO level. Why do I believe in that? Because if we want to be sovereign, we have to be in a situation to protect ourselves. Which means we have to be in a situation to have trained soldiers, common organization, common ambitions, common defense industry, and common projects. That's what we are doing. And I do believe that the situation where NATO, without the Europeans, was the only way to protect the Europeans, is now crazy. First, because, and it's fair, the Americans are thinking about different options and are less committed to that. And second, because how do you want to be respected if you are not even able to protect your people? How do you want me to explain Europe is the core idea to protect you, but the day you have a war, I'm not the one to intervene. It will be the US or somebody else. If you want to be credible and protect your people, which is the first thing they wait for you, you need more European intervention. So that's why I'm a strong believer in this project. We delivered pretty fast. We have now 8 common projects for this structured cooperation. Both of us are part of them, and we want to work even more on that. And I'm a strong believer on a better integration within NATO, but to have an actual European presence in defense. As for, the alternative between integration and enlargement. I don't like this word about enlargement. What happened 14 years ago, and especially with your country, for me, was much more largely what I would call reunification of Europe. Because what is Europe? Where is Europe? I mean, it's not the enlargement of Europe to have Slovakia within Europe. But now we have a new question, because we have 28, perhaps 27 tomorrow. Do we think it functions properly? I will be direct with you. We share this common destiny to go to the European Council every month or every 2 months. I can tell you, you would not love to be part of this club. You finish between 2 to 4 in the morning to discuss a communiqué that nobody reads. And sometimes those who negotiated the communiqué don't remember it a few days after, or are not even able to recognize the discrepancies we negotiate during hours and hours. So, I mean, it doesn't function properly. That's why I do believe we need more integration, more simplification, more common spirit. Otherwise, we will dismantle it progressively. So, I'm a strong believer of integration. I mean, building much more simple rules. And because I think for the Eurozone, for Europe of defense, for migration, for innovation and environment, we need to reinforce our level of integration, a few of us. And what I propose is to say, the one who wants to block the others could not be in a situation to block everything. He can decide not to join the club, but he has to leave the others to build something more efficient. And I speak for my country as well, because in 2005, we blocked everything by voting no. And it is a betrayal of the very first idea of European Union, because everything was based on a maximum ambition, a few countries, and the others wanted to join this club. Today, with the rule of unanimity, you never deliver. So, but nobody is attracted, and even those who are part of the club want to leave. So I'm a strong believer in more integration on these items I mentioned. I'm a strong believer of innovation in terms of methodology to have more dynamic. And in such a way, I think we can think how to widen our influence without the classical way to proceed. Let me explain. When you speak about Western Balkans, when you speak about our relation with Russia, perhaps Turkey, United Kingdom after the Brexit, you see that it is part of Europe, but with countries not respecting the same rule of law, with countries having decided different options, but you want to build something, and you want them to be anchored to the European project. That's why I do believe it's possible to have different circles, and I'm in favor of a sort of enlarged strategic partnerships with this very large and first circle. The second circle would be the current European Union, 20, or in a few months, 27. But probably we have to streamline this European Union to make it more pragmatic than today. And inner circles of those who decide to go further on monetary and economic issue, innovation, environment, defense, migration and security, and so on. This is my vision.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
I still need a lot of time to be able to speak so enthusiastic about European Union, but I will try in the future to do my best, because it's really great to listen to your words. But only small comment from the Slovak point of view, let's say. You know, Western Balkan is one of our priorities, and in your question, you mentioned that second alternative to a large European Union, to enlarge the free market area, let's say. I think we should not use the word free market enlargement, but for us it is to give those people from Western Balkan a perspective, a clear perspective. Where is their future? Otherwise, we see the influence of Turkey, of China, of Russia. So it is, from our side, important to send to them a clear signal, because we are pushing them now to go through some reforms, and you know how reforms are very painful. We did the same in the past before we entered the European Union, but if they don't see the light in the end of the tunnel, then they will stop with these processes, and they say, for what we have to do this, if we don't have a clear answer where we can enter this VIP club. But it is not about the free market. From my point of view, it is to give to the people in Western Balkan a clear perspective where we see their future. And I think we should see their future together with us and not with the huge influence of Turkey, Russia, or China in this region, because it's our part of our continent and they are our brothers and our sisters there.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Absolutely true. Now we are running out of the time, and your protocol told me that we need to be sharp and end in a few minutes, but you're the boss. So if you tell me that we can... Okay, okay. So I've seen a question here, the lady in the third row, the blonde lady. Yeah?
You can take 4.
3 or 4. Yeah.
Bonjour, Veronika Osvaldova from Smarthead. Dear Mr. President, I have a very simple question for you, but very important. As a president, please can you tell us what would be your sustainable message? It means how you contribute to build a more sustainable world. Merci.
Thank you very much. The second question here on this side.
Monsieur le Président, bonjour, bienvenue en Slovaquie, c'est un honneur pour nous. I'm the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee at the National Council of the Slovak Republic. And please, first of all, let me thank you for your appreciative and encouraging words that you are addressing to us so kindly. And let me thank you also for your visit. And please allow us to take it as a sign, symbolically also as an encouragement to the Slovak V4 presidency in our efforts to bring the V4 closer to Europe and to reopen the dialogue even more. My question would be about the common foreign policy of the European Union. I would like to ask you, what do you see as the biggest challenges of forming a truly common foreign policy of the EU in the context where, on one hand, we have the need, perhaps more than ever before, to have Europe as a strong global player, and on the other hand, we have the reluctance of some member states to give up a part of their sovereignty in the foreign policy area. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will take 2 more questions. One is on this side, and I will take 1 more. There are a lot of hands, I see. Please.
I'll take it. Hello, Alex Martin. I'm with Globsec, but as a Romanian citizen, and I'm very, very proud to be here. Mr. President, I have a question in the context of the discussion of the future of Europe. How would you define today the transatlantic relationship? And what is the Europe play in advancing it in a form or another? Thank you.
Thank you, and let me take 1 more question. Okay, here in the middle. So it's all ladies. A very good gender balance in the questions. Please.
Thank you. My question concerns ecology, and I wanted to ask, how can we give a push to ecology when we know how influential the lobbies are in Europe?
Thank you, Mr. President. 1 more? Yeah, okay. So who will raise the hand yeah, okay. Let me give the floor here. We could discuss for hours here about Europe. You see how engaged are the Slovak young people.
Thank you for the word. My name is Christian Ondaj. I'm also from Department of Political Science of Comenius University, and my question is about Brexit. You said a lot of inspiring words about unity of Europe, but now we see that a little bit that unity is breaking. So my question is that what does Brexit mean for international credit of European Union in the future? And is Brexit betraying of spirit of youth of Britons? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will start with Brexit, perhaps. I want to respect both the European voters and the British voters. The British voters decided to leave. The European voters didn't decide to dismantle the European Union. So that's why, for me, in the discussions we have, this is the two pillars we have to respect. I think if you try to see what Brexit means, first, this is, I would say, even de facto, a non-decision for the youth. I would say, if you look, there is a big divide between young people and older people. And the decision of young people in the UK was to remain. Second, it was created by the imbalances of Europe and the fact that the European Union cannot just be an ultra-liberal project, just free movement and freedom of everything. It is also a project of convergence and solidarity. Why? Because, I mean, it's a little bit ironical, but a decade or 15 years ago, when we discussed about this Bolkestein Directive and freedom of movement in Europe, the Brits were the most aggressive ones, saying, if you believe in Europe, you have to believe in free movement. In my country, you have many people were much more reluctant. And if you look at what the Brexiters used, is that the fact, I have now a Hungarian or a Polish worker in my country, and he's stealing the jobs of my people. Because there was not precisely the checks and balances mechanism and no convergence and solidarity. So this is a defeat of a certain vision of Europe. And for me, Brexit means, as well, as we said, it's one of the best illustrations of this democratic crisis. If the failure of truth and a democratic constructive dialogue. Because a lot of fake news were used by the promoters of the Brexit, and they decided not to deliver following this line the day after. So for me, the Brexit is a symptom of the current failure of Europe. And the answer is a stronger Europe with more solidarity, more convergence, and more sovereignty in order to avoid this new ultra-liberal proposal as the European one. That's my answer and my view of this project. I think I can go to the transatlantic relationship. Who was the one to? Yeah. Look, I think the transatlantic relationship is a critical one for several reasons. First, defense and security. We have a very important relation. I'm a strong believer in Europe of defense because I think it's the guidance for our credibility. Because I think if we are not able to protect ourselves, how do you want us to be credible even vis-à-vis the US? But within NATO, and I think this transatlantic partnership in terms of defense and security is absolutely critical for us. Second, a geopolitical view. I do my best in order to align our views on the different key items because the transatlantic common view is very useful. On Syria, for instance, and we are very much aligned, on Africa and a lot of collective common issues. Third, I think this transatlantic partnership should not be unilateral, it should be balanced, and we have to build as well our strategic autonomy vis-à-vis the US. This is our story. That's why I think we should not be totally aligned on the US for our strategy with Russia or China, and this is our view to see the global environment. We are a multilateral partner, so we are not the hostage of that, but we always have to be in a situation to explain our position to the transatlantic partner. Fourth, this is a very important economic relation, but it has to be balanced. That's why I don't agree with the protectionist view, which is a nationalistic way to deal with our issue. I think Europe should not be weak vis-à-vis the US in such a context. We have to preserve our interests. I think we have to do much more in terms of innovation and digital, but I think we have to protect us much more and build an actual sovereignty in such a context to help our digital players. This is one of our projects, to tax big digital players, to protect our privacy, to protect our economy. So for me, this relation is strategic and critical, but it will be balanced and is based on a stronger European sovereignty if we want to be respected. And this is why, for the EU foreign policy, First, my view is that we can do much more, and the EU foreign policy could not be on the short run the equivalent of a national foreign policy. But it's all about how to coordinate and take strong options on the critical points. And I don't think you reduce your sovereignty by doing so. For instance, if we don't align yourself vis-à-vis China, Russia, or the US, you weaken your ability to get a good deal and be efficient. I think for the transatlantic partnership, you need a European alignment not to be weak and to protect your economic agenda and your players. I think vis-à-vis Russia, if you want to increase your cybersecurity, if you want to avoid any propaganda influence or destabilization, you need a more European integrated view and a strong common position. If you want to be respected by China, given the size of the market and their interest, you need a European approach. So I think on vis-à-vis some critical powers, you need more Europe. If you want to progress on climate and digital, you need more Europe and a stronger foreign policy. So this is my view, and this is why I think more cooperation, more alignment in terms of interests, and common tools. And that's why I think Europe, a stronger Europe of defense is part of it if we want to be credible. As for the first and the last question, which was about sustainable message, and I understand it as my answer to climate change and sustainability in the current environment and the place of lobbies in it. My, I would say, sustainable word on sustainable commitment is precisely that we have to build Europe as the best place to live in. We have to build the leader of a green agenda. And this is feasible. When you look at the current choices in China and US, we are totally different. And I think the level of awareness of our people and our ability precisely to make a big move makes us as a potential global green leader. And this is what I want to do. It's impossible to deliver at the national scale. When we say that, what is our top priority? And where is, for me, the top priority is about emission and CO2 emission. We know that the first explanation of that is CO2 emission. And precisely, if you want to fight against climate change, if you want to comply with the Paris Agreement, we need it. You're right, we have a lot of lobbies, a lot of, as well, existing economic interests, a lot of workers afraid by that. And making such a change is never easy, never. For instance, we are making such a change at the French level. I mean, it's not automatically accepted by a lot of people. When you want to reduce the CO2 emission, you have to increase the cost of the CO2 for a lot of people. You have to tax it more. We will close the coal plants, and we will be the first to close all the coal plants in the country. It means we will destroy hundreds and hundreds of jobs in these different plants. When you increase the cost of your gas oil, you're very unpopular because middle classes pay for that. So the ability to deliver such an agenda is very tough. It's very complicated. And you have a lot of lobbies, and you have a lot of interests. But I think it's feasible because of the pressure of the NGOs. It's feasible because of precisely this relation with truth. I would say we have to share the facts, and the facts are here. Today, at the European level, we are not compliant with our trend. And I want us to be the leader of this sustainable world, so we have to accelerate this transition. So we have a French agenda, and I will make some additional announcements. It's tough, but the unique way to proceed and have strong results is a European policy. What does it mean? We have to accelerate the shift from classical cars to hybrid electric cars and less polluting cars. It's feasible, and we managed to get a consensus for 2040 with a 30% rate, if you heard about it. We have to do more and more and more, and it's some constraints, but innovation. Second, it means we have to increase the pricing of CO2 in Europe. We will have a lot of resistances, a lot of people dead against such a thing. But this is the only way to make the move from the classical industry to a greener one, and we can create a lot of jobs with that as well. But this is the only way to be compliant with our commitments. Third, we will have to accompany a lot of territories, a lot of sectors. And fourth, we will have to put a CO2 tax at the border of the European Union to avoid favoring industrial products and goods coming from countries where there is not this kind of constraints. But I think this policy is absolutely critical. And for me, we need a new agriculture and food policy at the same time. We tried to do so. In France, we had a lot of a discussion about Roundup and pesticides. But when I arrived as a president, the decision of Europe was to authorize the Roundup for 15 years. We thought I wanted 3 years, we got 5. But we divided by 3 the duration of the authorization. We had a lot of polemics in France because some people wanted us to put by law an interdiction for 3 years, which was almost impossible for a lot of farmers. But what we want to do now is to accompany them, to invest for new methods, new way to proceed, and to make this shift. But what I want you to take into consideration is that, yes, you have a lot of lobbies. We have to fight against these lobbies in order to defend facts, truth, and have fair debates based on science and facts. Second, you have to take into consideration we need to accompany people because this kind of change are never easy. And you have to change a lot of habits, customs, and existing balances, but we have to do so, and it will take time. But this is a battle where progressive people have now to team up and to join. Those who have a huge ambition and those who have to deal with reality against those who want to block everything. But my perspective and my willingness at the European scale is precisely to make our continent the leader of green economy and the wealthiest possible food for our people. Because it's what we owe to our people, and I think it's a core of our project. So thank you very much. I understand I have to rush, but let me thank you for that. Let me thank you, Mr. Meyer, for welcoming us here. Let me thank you, Peter, Mr. Prime Minister, for our good discussion. And I have to say our cooperation. What we've done during this month is exactly the spirit of what we discussed. A lot of people wanted to oppose Slovakia and France, and we delivered on concrete things. On posted workers directive because it was good for our workers on both sides. We will deliver on transport because it will be good on both sides. We will deliver together on migration because we refuse together to be, put in different boxes. We work very closely together on Eurozone. And that's the best evidence of the fact there is no division in Europe. But thank you very much. And let me thank you, gentlemen, ladies, for what you did a few decades ago as leaders and as great examples for us, because your generation inspired a lot of generations, and you took risks. My generation had a tremendous chance. We are born with peace and prosperity. And a lot of people forgot that it was a result of past conquest. You're here precisely as the evidence of these battles. And I think the young generation, or to your generation, the spirit of youth and the ability to have this kind of discussion. And those who think that Europe is the problem, Brussels is the problem, and let's go back to something we preferred, probably forgot this past revolution. Let's be just loyal to the spirit of revolution, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. And I have one more very important duty, because we hope to have you at our GOPSEC forum in May, and we still hope you will come back in the future, in the 2019. But we are going to give you a special Czech and Slovak Centennial Award for your leadership and for the leadership of French nation in helping to build Europe. And I would like to invite Chairman of GOPSEC, Ambassador Káčer, to hand it over and to say a few words.
Let me grab the mic, Mr. President. You see, if we inflate the room 10 times and if we inflate our time 5 times, we still will be, I think, having a lot of interest in that. So that's a big, big antidote, I have to tell you, against the poisoning we hear from populist, anti-Brussels, toxic, hate, whatever speech. Thank you very much for that grain of hope, not a grain in salt, what we are getting somewhere else. This is a special prize with our partner Jagello 2000, our Czech partner. Twice a year we award this special Czechoslovak prize, but this is special of specials. This is one of the kind centennial award, because this is the special year, 100 years of Czechoslovakia. And this is not about, us getting older and more nostalgic about what happened 100 years ago. I'm not that old. But there is a lesson in the past.
He's much younger than he looks.
Yes, that's my trick. 100 years ago, we went on a quest, which I would call a combination of love and reason. And this is the best foundation of any relationship, anyway. But on our marriage certificate, we got 2 best men. One was the Americans, and second was French. And even when you look today, a lesson, transatlantic relationship still matters, it's important. But strong Europe with right leadership, it's even maybe more important than that. And Czechoslovakia lesson was that based on the right values, because you rightly said so, and I can only echo, Europe has to be based on values, otherwise it's fragile. It was based on values, but also on a strategic vision. And that combined strong 20 years prosperous and democracy. And now the lesson is, you need to have courage, you need to have vision, you have to lock the eyes on the horizon, but it's good to walk that path with those who support you. And now, as you say, reunited Europe, not enlarged Europe, reunited Europe, we are proud to walk that path with you for stronger and better Europe. Mr. President, thank you for your dedication, your leadership, and that relationship among nations, what we got.
Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you. I'm very honored. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Put this camera on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Merci, Frédéric.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for everybody for coming for this discussion. You are in a pro-European island here in Central Europe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you very much. It was really a great pleasure. I can say you that in the car together with Mr. President, I asked him to come again. And I can promise you that I will do my best to bring him in spring again to Slovakia, and you will have a chance to speak with him.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.